The issue is not when did life begin. The question is where did the information come from? Information doesn't come from randomness. They're opposites to each other. And so there's a concept of irreducible complexity that Michael Behe has introduced that we want to understand. I have here a mousetrap. It consists of 5 parts. A basic platform on which there's a spring that loads a hammer. There's a holding bar that will hold that hammer back and hook itself on the catch, and you have a mousetrap. It has 5 parts. You can't get rid of any one of the parts and still have a mousetrap. It's what we call irreducible complexity. It's very simple, you say, but it has a minimum number of components without which it will not function. If I have only 4 of the 5 parts, I don't catch 4/5 as many mice. I catch 0. You follow me? There's a very profound fundamental insight here. It's that because that's true, this couldn't happen by chance because it's non-functional at all its intermediate stages. It's until someone puts it together that way that has any function at all. There's a concept of irreducible. Let me give you an example in nature. You take a bacteria that has a little tail that drives it through the fluid. We want to take and examine this particular bacteria. The flagellum is this tail, and we're going to examine carefully where it's connected to the bacteria through an electron microscope. When we examine that carefully, we discover something astonishing. What connects it there is an electric motor with 40 parts. Any one of those 40 parts missing, it doesn't work. And it's got C rings and L rings and P rings, and I won't go through the whole thing. You quickly get the glimpse that this is a complicated piece of engineering. And here's the functional description of it, how it operates from the, it's an electric motor. Most of us, okay, so we have a map of physical reality we're going to pursue during this study. The human body is where we're going to end up. There's organs. The organs are made up of tissues. Tissues are made up of cells. Cells are basically made up of molecular robots. The robots are built from an atomic structure, the atomic structure from subatomic particles. And the subatomic particles have no locality. You cut them in half, they no longer are local. They're everywhere in the universe. Very bizarre discovery about non-locality of these subatomic. We talked about the last 3 things last time. This time we're going to talk briefly about cells and these molecular robots, just briefly. We will talk about tissues and organs of the human body when we get to day 6. We're only on day 3. But I want to lay some of this groundwork. One of the fictions that they use in school is the thing called a simple cell. We now know there is no such thing as a simple cell. That's a fiction that Darwin, in good conscience, probably adopted because he didn't know better. But today we know that's a naive statement. Michael Denton, in 1986, the Australian evolutionist, published a key book on this. And he said, although the tiniest bacterial cells are incredibly small, each is in effect a veritable micro-miniaturized factory containing thousands of exquisitely designed pieces of intricate molecular machinery made up of 100 billion atoms, far more complicated than any machine built by man and absolutely without parallel in the non-living world. The simple cell, it's unparalleled complexity, and it has an adaptive design. It has a central memory bank, central library where the information is held. It's filled with assembly plants and processing units. It has repacking and shipping centers. It has robot machines in the form of protein molecules that typically consist of about 3,000 atoms in 3-dimensional configurations. And there are hundreds of thousands of different types, specific types of these things. It also has an elaborate communication system with quality control procedures and repair mechanisms. It even can muster armies to attack invaders. So if you were going to make a model of the simplest cell, and we're going to make this model 1,000 million times larger than real, each atom we're going to say will be about the size of a tennis ball. We're going to make this big model. We're going to take each atom will be represented by a tennis ball. We'll need 100 million atoms, 10 to the 13th. If we could pull together 1 per minute, it would take us 19 million years to assemble those tennis balls. The model in doing this would be over 10 miles in diameter, so you get the feeling what we're up against. The actual cell has a plasma membrane which has gateways for exchanges. It has signal receptors so it can get message traffic. There's a cytoplasm, which is a fancy word for when we don't know what it's made of. We have a nucleus, which is the information center, and that's where the master library is that everybody else will consult. Inside there is the nucleus, which is the automated factories, and that's where they do the product manufacturing. Then you've got these power plants, which provide the energy for the city to work. It's like a miniature city. And then you have the Golgi apparatus, which processes, packages, handles the shipping, and prepares for export. And then you have all these little vesicles which storage, transport, do trash disposal. They all have functions. This is a veritable city. Now, we have robot machines, hundreds of thousands of different types, artificial languages and decoding systems. We have memory banks for information storage. We have elegant control systems for regulating the automated assembly of the components. We have prefab and modular construction going on. And we have error, fail-safe, and proofreading devices for quality control. We have devices go around and check to make sure it's right, and if it's not, it rejects it. Now, let me give you an example. I was at Ford Motor Company. I was an executive at Ford for 6 years. And one of the proud facilities of the Ford Motor Company in Dearborn is the River Rouge plant. It's very famous for lots of reasons. It happens to be the largest integrated manufacturing plant in the world. You have raw limestone, iron ore, and coal going one end. In the plant, they make their own steel, they make their own paint, their own glass. They have automated part of the plant that makes the engines. Anyway, the raw material goes in one end, and new cars drive out the other end. And it builds these. It's also interesting to watch because they're building a mix. You have different kinds of cars and different colors all on the same line. It's incredibly very complicated plant. I think there's 97 miles of railroad in the plant. Huge facility. It's worth the tour if you're there. In fact, it's broken down about 2 or 3 tours. You always want to see the assembly plant. You have a choice of either seeing the automated engine plant or the steel mill. The engine plant always takes you, but there's nothing to see. There's nobody there. It's all automated. It's an automated engine plant. But the reason I mention this, once you've seen that, I can make the statement that the simplest cell is more complicated than the River Rouge plant at the Ford Motor Company. And that sort of gets it across if you have any feeling for that sort of thing. The cell is unequaled in any factory on the planet Earth. After having said all that, it's capable of replicating its entire structure in a matter of a few hours. When the time comes, there's a choreography that takes place where it will duplicate itself in a matter of hours. There's no way, if you had 1 million employees, you could do that to the Rouge plant.